Hi, this is Heather Meeker. I'm a lawyer in private practice, and this is a short presentation on how to structure a technology deal. This is a very short presentation and gives you some real basics to think about if you have to structure a deal. So let's get going. This is what I call my 5-finger mnemonic, and I developed this for myself in my practice in order to, shall we say, defend myself against having to answer questions very quickly about structuring deals. And the scenario that I envisioned when I developed this was a client calls you on the phone and says, I need a license agreement, and you have to very quickly understand what they need. And so these were 5 questions to ask in order to get the very basic elements of the deal down in my mind so that I could then help them structure the deal. So we're going to go through all of them now. The first question is exclusivity. That's always the first question you have to ask about any license agreement. And I associate this with the thumb because the thumb is what makes us as primates an exclusive group. So exclusivity means that the licensee will have some rights that nobody else has. And by the way, that can include rights that even exclude the licensor or not. Sometimes when the license is exclusive but not as to the licensor, it's called a sole license or a co-exclusive license. But this term is not widely used or consistently understood. So when you have a deal that is exclusive, you have to explain what exclusivity means. Exclusivity drives all of the other terms of the agreement. The terms of exclusive deals are very different from the terms for non-exclusive deals. The next question is, what is the market for the license? And by the way, this can apply also to a distributor agreement, reseller agreement, OEM, value-added reseller agreement, any kind of channel agreement. And this point asks, what are the boundaries of the rights for the licensee or distributor or reseller? In what market can they sell? And by market, we generally mean an economic market, such as healthcare or IT or financial services. I associate this with the index finger because markets have indexes. The next is territory, and this is similar to a market, but it is geographical in nature. So the question is, does the licensee or the reseller have the rights to sell worldwide or only in a particular territory? And I associate this with the middle finger that sticks straight up because it's like the axis of a globe. The next is duration. And of all the points, I would say this is probably one of the most important of the agreement, but it is often the one that gets the least attention. How long will the agreement last? Or how long will the rights being granted last? Will they last forever? Will they last for a year? If they ask for a year, can they be renewed for additional years, and so forth? I associate this one with the ring finger because the ring, the wedding ring, represents eternity, and so that I associate with duration. Finally, the last point is royalty, or really any kind of fee or money consideration. And obviously that's a very important point for an agreement, and it can have many different forms. I associate that with the pinky finger because, as you can see in the picture, a little girl sticks out her pinky when she wants to be a princess. So if you find yourself in a situation where you have to quickly ask the most important questions to structure a technology deal, these are 5 questions you can ask. They're not the only questions, of course, but once you know the answers to these questions, you will have a framework on which to structure the agreement. Now, it's important to understand that these different terms overlap and relate to each other, they have to be consistent. So for instance, what about market and territory? Market and territory are kind of two sides of the same coin. Markets are economic and territories are geographic. But today, geographic territories have come to mean less and less due to globalization and e-commerce. It's much easier for a company to sell in multiple geographic locations than it used to be. So deals that are structured by territory have slowly been giving way to deals that are structured by economic market. Also keep in mind that markets or territories can be defined by things other than national boundaries. For instance, in many deals are structured by language. So for instance, a territory or a geography might be English-speaking countries or Chinese-speaking countries. If you take this approach to structure your deal, keep in mind that not everybody in a specific geographic jurisdiction necessarily speaks the same language. The reason that deals tend to get structured by language these days, particularly content-related deals, is that it takes some work and resources to localize products or content into other languages. Royalties and duration also are very closely related. So if you have a license or a distribution agreement and the licensee or distributor is paying a fixed fee, that usually suggests that they get some kind of perpetual rights, particularly with an intellectual property license. Distribution and reseller agreements much more rarely are on a perpetual basis. If the deal has progress payments, for instance, X number of dollars per year, that usually goes along with a fixed duration for the deal. So the deal would be yearly, for instance, and might be renewable. And then when you have running royalties, for example, 5% of net sales or some other transaction-based royalty, that usually goes with renewable duration licenses as well. So when you're structuring your deal, make sure that the monetary consideration that's being paid and the duration of the deal makes sense together. Royalties and exclusivity also overlap. Exclusive arrangements always have minimum royalties, and the reason for that is that the licensor has to be paid the value of foregoing granting licenses to others or exercising the rights on their own. Now, if a licensee doesn't sell enough materials or products to justify the minimum royalties, a few different things can happen. For instance, if they fall short, they might have the option to true up or pay the difference between what they've paid so far and the minimum royalty in order to continue their exclusive rights. But sometimes the licensor won't allow this because they're concerned that if the licensee is failing to meet minimum royalties, the licensee hasn't worked hard enough to develop a market for the materials or products. Also, if the licensee falls short of minimum royalties, another possibility is that the agreement is converted to a non-exclusive relationship, or perhaps this can happen territory by territory or market by market, so that the licensor can step in to exploit the market on their own or allow other licensees to do so. Or sometimes the agreement simply terminates. Well, that's it for this very short presentation. I hope you've found it useful. If you would like more information about technology licensing, you might want to take a look at my book, Technology Licensing a Primer. You can get that on Amazon.com. And thanks very much for listening. This is Heather Meeker signing off.